Hey, Soul Stories fam. We're about to begin a brand new love journey. Comment where you're watching from so we can see that our Soul Stories family is all around the world. The crackling sound of the projector filled the vast conference room. On the screen, charts of revenue, expenses, and patient care rates appeared in sharp detail. Elise Carter, still in her white blouse hastily removed after a 10-hour surgery, carried the faint scent of antiseptic on her sleeves. She was exhausted, but her eyes burned with fire. Cutting the pediatrics budget? Do you even know what that means? Elise stood tall, her voice clear and firm, unshaken by the row of executives seated before her. At the head of the table sat Sebastian Knight, his tailored black suit flawless, his posture relaxed. He tapped his fingers rhythmically on the table, as though this were nothing more than a dull symphony. His amber brown eyes swept over Elise, and the corner of his lips curved into a mocking smile. A hospital is not a charity, Dr. Carter. If we keep chasing emotions, this hospital will go bankrupt before saving another single life. The air in the room tightened like a stretched wire. Some doctors lowered their heads to avoid the clash. Others exchanged anxious glances. Everyone was used to watching Sebastian and Elise spar, but each time felt like witnessing a live boxing match. Elise gripped the stack of documents in her hand. You see patients as numbers. I see them as human beings. And I'm sorry, but if this hospital can only survive by sacrificing children, I'd rather walk away. The room fell silent. Sebastian let out a low laugh, deep and cutting, like a blade against Elise's fiery temper. He replied, soft enough to taunt, "The door's always open, doctor. But I'm afraid you can't go anywhere just yet. This hospital still needs your talent." A shiver ran down Elise's spine. She hated the way he managed to both acknowledge and belittle her in the same sentence. Hated it enough to want to hurl the documents straight at his face. When the meeting ended, Elise stormed out, her heart still pounding. Pulling out her phone, she opened a chat window with her best friend, a resident in internal medicine. Her fingers flew across the screen, unloading her fury. If every man on earth died, I'd rather stay single forever than ever fall for Sebastian Knight. Arrogant, heartless, insufferable. He's the most unbearable man alive. She hit send so hard the phone nearly slipped from her hands. Only when the name Sebastian Knight appeared at the top of the message thread did Elise's blood turn to ice. No way! Panicked, she tapped the recall button, but the hospital's internal system didn't allow it. A minute passed. Her heart thudded wildly, ready to burst out of her chest. Beep. The phone buzzed. A new message from Sebastian Knight himself. "Lucky for you, men haven't gone extinct yet, Dr. Carter." Elise collapsed onto the bench in the hallway, her face burning. She buried her head in her hands, wishing the ground would swallow her whole. Damn it, I just dug my own grave. Back in the corridor, Elise ran into Sebastian. He stood there, arms folded, a half smile playing on his lips as though he had just uncovered a delicious secret. "Dr. Carter," his deep voice rolled out evenly, "thank you for the sweet message. I'll take it as a very special kind of confirmation from you." Elise's eyes widened, nearly choking on her words. "You don't flatter yourself. That message..." Sebastian cut her off, leaning down close to her ear and whispering, "Relax, I won't tell anyone. But who knows? One day you might have to take those words back yourself." He walked away, leaving Elise frozen in the hallway, furious, humiliated, and worried about just how far he would go to tease her. That night, Elise sat alone in her small apartment, staring at her phone screen, flashing with her best friend's rapid-fire texts. "Oh my God, you really sent it by mistake? What did he say? Don't tell me he's going to hold this over you for life." Elise bit her lip and sighed. That's exactly what he's going to do. And just as she feared, from that day on, Sebastian Knight, the CEO she despised, had found the perfect reason to insert himself into her life. Not with his power, but with one disastrous message. Mornings at the hospital always began with the sharp rhythm of shoes striking down the hallway, nurses calling out, carts colliding, and the scent of coffee drifting up from the ground floor cafeteria. To Elise, it was a familiar symphony. She usually gulped down a quick cup of strong black coffee before stepping into the OR. But ever since the disastrous text message, every step she took in the hospital seemed to carry another shadow. That morning, as Elise stepped out of the on-call room, the elevator doors slid open, and there stood Sebastian Knight. Dressed in a charcoal gray suit and deep blue tie, his cool, piercing gaze was enough to silence the entire corridor. Staff bowed politely, while Elise turned on her heel, ready to escape. "Dr. Carter!" His voice rang out, low and steady, forcing her to stop. Elise turned back, keeping her face composed. "I'm busy. I don't have time for you." The corner of Sebastian's lips curved slightly, a mischievous glint flashing in his amber eyes. "Relax. I won't ask you to sacrifice yourself for humanity." Nearby nurses held their breath, then stifled their giggles. Elise's cheeks flamed. She wanted the ground to swallow her whole. "You!" she ground out through clenched teeth. "You're impossible." "Just stating the obvious," Sebastian replied casually, his tone detached, though his words seemed chosen precisely to rile her up. Elise stormed into another elevator, slamming the door shut. Her heart raced, not from embarrassment, but from sheer fury. That afternoon, Elise stopped by the small coffee shop in the lobby to recharge. The place was packed, and she waited in line, balancing a thick stack of files in her arms. "Dr. Carter," came a deep voice just behind her. Elise stiffened. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Sebastian stepped closer than necessary, the faint trace of expensive cologne brushing past her. "After 10 hours in the OR, I think you should allow yourself to smile, especially at someone special like me. It'd be good for your health." Elise tightened her grip on the files, keeping her voice cold. "You're not a doctor. Don't pretend you care about my health." Sebastian shrugged, ordered an espresso, then leaned down before leaving, whispering just for her, "Don't worry. I haven't gone extinct yet. You don't have to panic about that terrifying vow of yours." Elise froze, nearly dropping her files. For the rest of the day, his words echoed in her head like an ink stain, spreading without end. It didn't take long before snippets of their half-serious, half-teasing exchanges spread through the hospital. Nurses whispered behind her back, "Did you see? The CEO actually talked to Dr. Carter again today." "Yeah. Normally, he doesn't even lower his voice for anyone." "Maybe there's actually something between them?" Elise overheard and nearly spat out her coffee. "There's nothing. He just enjoys annoying me," she snapped. But the more she denied it, the more curious her colleagues became. Some of the male doctors even joked, "Careful, Carter. Hate can turn into love, you know." Elise bristled. "Not in a million years," she barked before storming off. Yet deep down, a confusing unease stirred. By late afternoon, Elise was reviewing charts in the records room when Sebastian walked in without knocking. "What are you doing here?" she asked flatly. "Checking how my hospital runs," he replied smoothly, striding closer to her desk. "You work too much. I can't have my best doctor burning out." Elise looked up, locking eyes with him. Her heart skipped a beat, but she quickly built up her cold defenses. "I don't need your concern." Sebastian tilted his head, lips curling. "Really? Funny. Your message sounded very concerned about me." "You..." Elise shot up, face flaming. "I told you that was a mistake." "Mistake or not, it's on my phone." "And honestly," he paused, lowering his voice, "I found it rather cute." Elise was speechless. She turned away, shoving papers into a pile, her heartbeat pounding erratically. On her way home, Elise slumped into the taxi seat with a heavy sigh. All day long, from the elevator to the cafe, from the boardroom to the records room, Sebastian had been everywhere. With that half smile, with those razor-sharp words, she swore to herself, "Tomorrow I'll avoid him at all costs." But a small voice in her head whispered, "If you hate him so much, why does your heart race every time he's near?" Elise shook her head hard, pushing away the absurd thought. To her, Sebastian Knight was still the sworn enemy she could never coexist with. But to Sebastian, it seemed everything was only just beginning. The London Royal Museum glowed under golden lights, its ancient stone walls draped with elegant banners reading, "20th Anniversary, Knight Medical Group." Luxury cars lined up at the entrance, VIP guests in evening gowns and tuxedos stepping gracefully onto the red carpet. Elise Carter stood outside, taking a deep breath. She wore a sapphire blue gown that hugged her curves. Simple, yet elegant. The high heels made her steps awkward, and truthfully, she hadn't wanted to come. But her department head had insisted, "Dr. Carter, you're one of our brightest stars. You can't be absent." Inside, Elise felt nothing but out of place. This wasn't her world. The flashing cameras, the polite smiles, the clinking champagne glasses. She belonged to the sterile light of the operating room, the steady beep of monitors, the antiseptic scent of the surgical wing. The music faded, and the MC introduced the evening star. Sebastian Knight, the young, powerful CEO who had elevated the hospital into one of the largest private healthcare systems in Europe. Sebastian took the stage in a flawless black tuxedo. Tall and commanding, confidence radiated from his every gesture. His deep, steady voice carried through the hall. 20 years ago, Knight Medical was just a small private hospital. Today we operate in 10 countries, serving millions of patients. But above all, we've kept our promise, saving lives with excellence. The room erupted in thunderous applause. Elise stood at the far corner, gripping her glass of wine tightly. She couldn't deny it. No matter how much she despised him, Sebastian Knight had an irresistible presence. Almost as if sensing her stare, Sebastian looked up. For a fleeting moment, his amber eyes locked with hers before he continued his speech. Yet over the next 10 minutes, Elise noticed his gaze drifting back toward her more than once. Is he seriously taunting me in front of everyone? Elise bit her lip, forcing herself to appear composed. When the speech ended, soft jazz filled the hall as the guests mingled with drinks in hand. Elise retreated to the buffet table, taking some salad and a glass of water, determined to blend into the background of this glittering scene. A fellow doctor whispered beside her, "Elise, you look stunning tonight, but why stay here? Do you know how many sponsors want to meet you?" Elise gave a faint smile. She had no desire to meet anyone, especially not the man she loathed most. But fate rarely played along. When she turned around, Sebastian was standing right beside the buffet, a glass of wine swirling in his hand. "Dr. Carter," his deep voice carried a teasing edge, "you truly stand out tonight. I almost thought you'd wear your white coat forever." Elise inhaled sharply, answering curtly, "I'm here for work, not for comments." His lips curved slightly, a glimmer of amusement sparking in his eyes. "Good thing. I don't need an event like this to notice you." Her cheeks burned. Elise quickly turned away, unwilling to linger another moment in the ballroom. Her steps carried her outside to the museum's back garden, where strings of golden lights hung from ancient trees. The air was calm, scented with roses, the faint strains of jazz drifting in from the hall. Elise sat on a stone bench, drawing in a deep breath to shake off the suffocation of the party. But before she could fully settle, a familiar voice came from behind her. "You always prefer running away, don't you?" Startled, Elise turned. Sebastian stood there, hands casually in his pockets, looking as if the garden were his personal domain. "Are you following me?" she demanded. "No need to follow." Sebastian shrugged, stepping closer. "You shine so brightly. It's impossible to ignore." Elise drew in a sharp breath, steadying herself. "Don't start again." "I don't want to argue tonight." He was silent for a moment, then raised his glass toward her. "Then let's toast to the hospital and to prove you're not running away." Elise froze, heat rushing to her face. She hated drinking, but pride forced her hand. To prove her words true, she snatched the glass and drained it in one gulp. Then another. Soon the alcohol blurred her thoughts, leaving her lightheaded. The next thing Elise became aware of was Sebastian, so close. His warm breath brushed against her skin, his gaze locked on her face. "Elise." He spoke her name, his voice lower than the jazz music echoing faintly from afar. "Do you really hate me that much?" She wanted to argue, to push him away, but her trembling hands refused to obey. Under the golden lights and heady wine, all reason melted. The kiss came suddenly, fierce, searing. Elise's mind screamed to stop, yet her heart and body betrayed her, answering his touch. That night, in the quiet garden behind the museum, Surrounded by golden lights and the sweet scent of roses, Elise Carter broke her own ironclad vow for the very first time. Morning light streamed through the thin white curtains, flooding the luxurious penthouse near London Square. On the wide bed covered in crisp white sheets, Elise Carter jolted awake. Her head pounded, her body ached. But what froze her wasn't the hangover, it was the warmth of the man lying right beside her. Sebastian Knight. He lay on his side, one arm resting loosely on the sheets, his face serene, as if the night had brought nothing more than a peaceful sleep. The soft morning glow traced his sharp features, the strong bridge of his nose, the long dark lashes, the curve of his lips. Elise's heart stopped for a beat, then raced wildly. Dear God, what have I done? She shot upright, clutching the blanket around herself, retreating to the edge of the bed. The room was unfamiliar, with modern furniture, artwork on the walls, and glass windows opening to a sweeping view of London Square. This was clearly not her world. Sebastian stirred, eyes opening slowly. His amber gaze softened the moment it landed on her confusion. Good morning, Dr. Carter. His voice was low, husky, touched with lazy warmth, as though he'd just woken from a pleasant dream. Elise's panic spilled into stammered words. This can't be. Last night was just a mistake. The corner of Sebastian's mouth lifted, half amused, half mocking. A mistake? I'd call it a turning point. Elise glared, clutching the blanket tighter. No, we were drunk. We lost control, that's all. I don't want to talk about it again. Sebastian pushed himself up, leaning against the headboard, eyes fixed on her. If you want to call it a mistake, that's your choice. But I don't, and I don't think you really want to forget it either. Flustered, Elise scrambled for her sapphire blue dress tossed across the sofa. She pulled it on without bothering to check the mirror, her heart thundering in her chest, ashamed, furious at herself for letting things spiral. Sebastian, this will never happen again. From now on, we are the CEO and the doctor. Nothing more. Sebastian rose, his tall frame closing the distance between them. His presence pressed down on her nerves as he leaned in, his whisper brushing her ear. You can tell yourself that as many times as you like. But I know, your eyes, your body last night, they didn't lie. Elise's throat tightened. Her heart clenched painfully. She wrenched the door open, snapped. I don't care what you think. To me, it was a mistake, and slammed it shut behind her. In the silence of the penthouse, Sebastian stood staring at the closed door. Slowly, a faint smile touched his lips. Mistake, huh? He murmured, pouring himself an espresso from the machine on the counter. If that was a mistake, it's one I'd never want to correct. His mind replayed the image of Elise leaning into his chest under the museum garden's golden lights, the hesitant kiss that ignited into fire, her eyes defiant yet trembling. It was a flame he had no intention of extinguishing. Sebastian Knight had never lacked for anything, money, power, women, but no one had ever infuriated and captivated him at the same time the way Elise did. He knew from that very moment he would never let her slip out of his orbit again. Meanwhile, Elise sped away in a taxi toward her small apartment, her body slumped against the seat, her heart a storm of chaos. Why me? Why him? Her mind flashed with memories of their heated arguments in the boardroom, his cold disdain, the way he treated patients like numbers. That was why she despised him to her very core. And yet she, of all people, had broken her own rules in a moment of weakness. All the way home, she repeated it to herself like a mantra. Last night was an accident. It cannot happen again. But deep inside, the memory of that kiss in the garden, the warmth of his arms, lingered like an indelible stain of ink. Elise buried herself in work, determined to act as if nothing had happened. But for Sebastian, that morning marked the start of an obsession he couldn't shake. He wanted more. He wanted to shatter the ice around Elise's heart. The battle between reason and desire, between mistake and turning point, had officially begun. In the days following the gala, Elise did everything she could to avoid Sebastian. She switched shifts, skipped meetings where he was present, and even left the hospital through the back exit just to dodge him. But the harder she tried, the more the memories of that night echoed in her head. His burning amber eyes, the grip of his arms, the warmth of his breath so close. Number. Forget it. It was just a mistake. Elise repeated it to herself dozens of times, but her heart refused to obey her reason. One Monday morning, just as Elise finished a surgery, a familiar voice called from behind her. "Elise?" She turned and her heart skipped a beat. Ryan Collins, her closest friend from university, and the secret crush she'd never confessed. Ryan stood tall, his brown hair neatly trimmed, his gentle smile still unchanged. The only difference was the white coat and the name tag on his chest. Dr. Collins, cardiology. "Ryan? Oh my God, I can't believe it's really you," Elise exclaimed, throwing her arms around him. Warmth and familiarity rushed back, as if the years apart had never existed. "I just transferred back to London," Ryan said with a bright smile in his brown eyes. "The hospital was hiring more cardiologists, and I thought, what better place to return to when I knew an old friend would be here?" Elise found herself smiling. Ryan's arrival felt like a fresh breeze blowing away the heavy fog clouding her mind. In the days that followed, Ryan settled in quickly. He often stopped by the surgical department, bringing Elise a hot cup of coffee or inviting her to lunch. With him, Elise didn't need to defend herself, didn't need to argue. He listened to her talk about the pressure of work, the endless nights on call, answering only with patience and kindness. One evening, as they strolled along the Thames, Ryan said softly, "Elise, I'm glad to see you're still as strong as ever. But your eyes, they seem to carry more weariness than before." Elise froze, then gave a strained smile. "It's just work." "I'm used to it." Ryan studied her for a long moment, as if wanting to say more, but only shook his head. "If it gets too heavy, lean on me." Simple words, yet they eased something tight in Elise's chest. Maybe this was her chance to start over. A kind, steady man, so different from Sebastian Knight. But Elise had no idea that every moment she spent with Ryan was being noticed by someone else. From the top-floor balcony of his office, Sebastian watched them leave a cafe together, laughing with easy familiarity. His face stayed calm, but his hand tightened around his glass until his knuckles turned white. During a meeting, while Elise presented her plan to improve surgical procedures, Sebastian kept his cold expression, but his eyes involuntarily flicked toward the back row, where Ryan sat, listening to Elise with admiration shining in his gaze. Afterwards, Sebastian caught Elise in the hallway. He stepped closer, his tone calm but edged with steel. "Dr. Carter, I see you and Dr. Collins are quite close." Elise frowned. "Why should you care? That's our private matter." The corner of Sebastian's mouth lifted in a faint, cynical smile. "Private?" Of course, he walked away, leaving Elise simmering with both anger and confusion. One evening, Ryan walked Elise home. At her apartment door, he hesitated before saying, "Elise, I know you've been hurt, but if you'll let me, I want to be the one by your side. You don't have to carry everything alone." Elise froze. In that instant, she remembered Sebastian's eyes, the kiss in the museum garden, and her heart clenched. But her mind snapped back quickly. "Yes, this is the right choice. Ryan is who I need, not Sebastian." She forced a smile and nodded. "Thank you, Ryan. With you here, I can finally breathe easier." Meanwhile, in his office high above the city, Sebastian sat alone, staring at the glowing streets below. The cigar in his hand burned low, smoke curling thickly around him. He was not a man easily consumed by jealousy, yet for the first time in his life, the sight of Elise with another man was unbearable. He closed his eyes, recalling the moment Elise melted into his arms, the burning kiss under golden lights. She had not been indifferent, he knew it, and yet now she smiled at Ryan in a way she had never smiled at him. Sebastian's fist clenched. A cold smile flickered across his lips. "Go ahead, Elise. Try, but you'll learn soon enough. No one can replace me." Monday morning, 7:30 a.m. The 12th floor conference room was packed. Elise clutched a stack of files, keeping herself near the door, trying to stay out of his line of sight. On the projector screen, bold letters read, "Hybrid or Cardio-Neuro Research Group, 72-hour optimization protocol." Sebastian entered at exactly 7:31. Wearing a charcoal suit and a deep blue tie, his gaze swept the room before pausing for a single beat as he stood before Elise. He rested one hand on the back of a chair and said simply, "This project needs a highly skilled general surgeon to finalize the protocol. I nominate Dr. Carter as the clinical lead." A ripple of murmurs spread through the room. Elise frowned. "No, I have 2 knee replacements scheduled and I'm not suited for a project under your direct supervision." Sebastian's tone was light, detached. "The board approved this project. I only handle the budget." A thin smile flickered, sharp as a blade. "And don't you always fight for more funding for pediatrics?" 72 hours. If your team hits the safety benchmark, I'll sign off immediately." Elise was silent for half a minute. Her grip on the files turned her knuckles white. He was clearly forcing her hand, but his promise for pediatrics was a hook too sharp to escape. "Fine," she said at last, each word clipped. "For the patients." Sebastian nodded, calm as though he'd just moved a chess piece into the perfect square. Break time. The cafeteria was crowded. Elise waited in line, eyes fixed on the menu board, refusing to think about anyone else. A deep voice sounded just behind her. 2 coffees, 1 espresso, 1 black for Dr. Carter." She spun around. "Are you following me?" Sebastian handed her a paper cup, unbothered. "Black keeps you sharp. 72 hours isn't enough for someone easily distracted." She hissed, "If you think one night changes anything, you're wrong." Sebastian didn't flinch, didn't step back. His amber eyes met hers, steady, infuriating. "No," he said slowly, "but clearly you haven't forgotten." A passing nurse overheard, giggling with her friend. "Oh God, not again." Elise flushed, snatched the cup, and stormed off. In the glass panel, she caught the reflection of Sebastian's half-smile, the kind that knew he'd landed an arrow exactly where it hurt. The small meeting room on the 6th floor had become the war room. Whiteboards were covered in arrows, pre-op time, clamp duration, decision loop during complications. Elise stood at the board, marker twirling between her fingers. "We're not robots," she pointed at the line. "Cut 5 minutes from post-op pain assessment. Cutting 5 minutes here means cutting 5 minutes off a human being." Across from her, Sebastian tapped a rhythm on the table, then surprised everyone with a nod. "Agreed. But in exchange, cut 7 minutes from the records transfer. I'll have IT redesign the electronic orders." The team looked up, stunned. A CEO trading paperwork for patient time? Elise hesitated, then drew another arrow on the board. "Fine. And we'll shift part of pain management into multimodal protocols from pre-op?" "Approved," Sebastian said instantly, "as long as your data can defend it before the board." The door opened. Ryan entered, still in his white coat, the faint smell of antiseptic clinging to him. "Sorry, cardiology consult ran long." He smiled at Elise, his warm eyes like a soft blanket. Sebastian glanced over, face unchanged, though his breath seemed to catch for half a beat. Ryan spread his files. "If we shorten pre-op, we'll need better screening for hidden valve stenosis. I propose bedside echo before transfer." Elise's eyes lit up. "Perfect. I'll run a quick training for the lead nurses," Sebastian concluded. "Good. I want a full simulation in 18 hours. If it passes, pediatrics gets its funding the same day." He rose, locking eyes with Elise for a single second. "Don't be late." Lunch. Elise sat in a far corner with her tray. Sebastian coincidentally chose the table across, opening his laptop, saying nothing, just letting the screen glow catch her reflection in the glass. Afternoon. Elise waited for the elevator. The doors slid open. Sebastian, alone. She turned to the stairs instead. 3 floors up, he was already leaning on the landing rail, holding a water bottle. Drink. Dehydration drops efficiency by 15%. "You could drop my efficiency by 100% by staying away." He shrugged but pressed the bottle into her hand. "The team needs you, Carter." Late night. The hospital cafe was nearly empty. The barista smirked as she scrawled on the lids, "Mr. Not Extinct and Doctor Can't Forget." Elise caught the writing, shooting daggers with her eyes. Sebastian simply lifted his cup, reading the words as if they were a private joke scripted by fate. 10 p.m. The war room was quiet, but for markers scratching across paper. Elise bent over the simulation data, shoulders stiff. A paper box landed in front of her. Hot chicken soup. "Don't look at me like the villain," Sebastian said, hands in his pockets. "Eat." Elise didn't lift her head. Her voice was ice. "I don't take anything that could be mistaken for a bargain." "And if it's mistaken for concern?" His reply was quiet, almost too quiet. She froze, then lifted her gaze. "If you think one night—" "I've already said," Sebastian cut in, calm, never raising his voice. "No, but clearly you haven't forgotten." His stare held hers, unblinking. "Neither have I." The air thickened, heavy as storm clouds. Elise crushed the paper cup in her hand. "Then forget. We're the CEO and a doctor, nothing more." Sebastian tilted his head, smiling thinly. "Are you telling the whiteboard? Or me?" Elise shot to her feet, the chair screeching. "I'm saying it to anything that tries to drag me away from my patients." Sebastian was silent for a beat, then nodded. "Fine. Back to patience," he pointed at the board. "If the simulation crashes with hypotension at minute 37, what drug do you pick?" Elise exhaled hard, diving back into the numbers. 5 minutes of rapid-fire debate later, both of them fell quiet, spent but satisfied, like they'd just taken a hairpin curve without losing control. Sebastian pulled out his phone. "I'll have IT roll out the new interface tonight." His eyes flicked to her. "And you, sleep 4 hours. I want my best surgeon alerted at 8 a.m. Elise opened her mouth to protest, but just then, a wave of dizziness swept over her like a shadow. She gripped the desk, masking it quickly. Sebastian noticed. He didn't rush, only slid his chair half a step closer, close enough to catch her if she fell. "Carter?" "I'm fine," she said quickly. "Too much coffee." He didn't argue. "I'll walk you to the garage." "Not necessary." New war room rule. Clinical lead doesn't take the stairs past midnight. He held the door open, his voice CEO cool, though his eyes had softened into something harder to name. Outside, a misting rain blurred the glass awning. Elise's heels slipped slightly on the wet tile, when a firm hand caught her wrist, sharp and sure, as if he'd anticipated it. "Careful." Sebastian pulled her beneath the awning. The umbrella snapped open with a soft click. Elise yanked her hand back. "I can take care of myself." "I know." He tilted the umbrella toward her, letting half the drizzle soak him. "But sometimes, letting someone else care doesn't make you weaker." Elise met his gaze squarely. "I hate you." "Fair," Sebastian replied evenly. "I hate myself every time I see you about to fall." A taxi pulled up. Elise opened the door and hesitated for half a beat. "Tomorrow, 8 a.m. Don't be late." Sebastian smiled faintly. "Don't skip breakfast." The door shut. The cab sped off, leaving him standing in the rain, umbrella in hand, eyes following her like an unspoken vow. Back at her apartment, Elise dropped her bag onto the couch and leaned against the door. The silence pressed heavily, yet her mind echoed with fragments of the day. Don't forget. Don't be late. Eat breakfast. Careful. She flicked on the kitchen light and poured water. A strange metallic taste lingered. Her stomach clenched, nausea rising fast. Elise braced against the sink, breathing hard until it passed. Just stress. And coffee, she told herself, wiping at tears she hadn't realized were falling. Outside, the drizzle whispered against the glass. In her head, the 72-hour timeline spun like a film reel. Patience, simulations, whiteboards, and those amber eyes that refused to leave. Elise turned off the light, pulling the blanket over her shoulders. She still hated him. She had to hate him. But in the stillness, her heart was a stubborn creature, like a cat called one too many times, arching its back, yet prowling closer all the same. Outside, 8 a.m. drew nearer, and the cat-and-mouse game had only just entered its most dangerous turn. Lately, Elise had been feeling increasingly exhausted. In the mornings, she would step into surgery only to feel dizzy after standing for a short while. A few colleagues even teased her without meaning harm. "Dr. Carter, you've lost weight, but you look pale." "Something going on." Elise forced a thin smile. Too many night shifts, that's all. But in the bathroom mirror, she knew the truth was no longer hiding. The relentless nausea, the subtle changes in her body, all pointed to the one fact she wanted to deny. She was pregnant. One evening after a grueling surgery, Elise sat slumped in the doctor's lounge. Ryan walked in, holding 2 cans of juice. Seeing her pale face, he set one down immediately. Elise, something's different about you. You're hiding something, aren't you? She shook her head, but a second later, nausea struck hard. She bolted to the bathroom. When she returned, Ryan was waiting, his expression more serious than she'd ever seen. Elise, you're pregnant, aren't you? Elise froze. Every layer of armor she'd built shattered. She sank into a chair, covering her face with her hands, tears spilling hot and fast. Yes, but please, don't tell anyone. Ryan was silent for a few moments before asking quietly, Who's the father? Elise bit her lip, then whispered so softly it was as if she feared her own ears. Sebastian Knight, the night of the gala. I lost control. I hate myself for it. Ryan frowned but didn't reproach her. He simply sighed and handed her a tissue. Elise, you need to be honest with him. Sebastian has a right to know. The baby has a right to know. Elise lifted her tear-streaked face. No, Ryan. You don't understand. You know what he's like. He'd treat this child as a responsibility, as an heir to manage, not as someone to love. I don't love him. I hate him. I don't want my baby growing up in a cold family like that. Ryan studied her for a long time, then finally nodded, his voice warm and steady. If you're that afraid, let me help. If it comes to it, I'll claim the baby as mine. Elise, I don't want you to fight this alone. Her heart clenched. She knew Ryan meant it. His kindness had never wavered. In her desperation, she clung to his offer like a lifeline. But how could she ever hide it from Sebastian's piercing eyes? The following week, during an executive meeting, Elise had no choice but to attend. Sebastian's gaze never left her. When the others had gone, he walked straight up, blocking the doorway. Carter, you're pregnant. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. Elise gripped her files tightly, forcing her voice steady. And if I am? Sebastian stepped closer, his amber eyes cutting through every defense. The child. It's mine, isn't it? Her heart hammered, but she remembered Ryan's words, remembered the fear she'd carried for days. She inhaled sharply, then forced out, No, the baby is Ryan's. The room thickened with silence. Elise could hear nothing but her own pounding heartbeat. Sebastian tilted his head slightly, a bitter smile tugging at his lips. Ryan Collins. Elise nodded, though her insides trembled. Yes, we've been together. Sebastian said nothing more. The pen in his hand cracked as he squeezed. Then he turned and walked away. His voice echoed back, dry and cutting. Congratulations. I hope you found what you wanted. The door slammed shut. Elise collapsed into a chair, tears streaming, whispering to herself, This is the only way to protect my baby. That night, high in his office, Sebastian stood motionless at the window, staring down at the glittering city of London. A glass of wine swirled in his hand, though he couldn't swallow a drop. Ryan. The baby is Ryan's. He repeated it, forcing himself to believe. But deep inside, a fracture widened, splitting him apart. From then on, Sebastian no longer teased her, no longer provoked her with his smirks. Yet Elise's life was quietly surrounded by invisible shields, unmarked security guards near her apartment, expedited approvals for her department's medical supplies. And on stormy nights, a luxury car parked a few streets away, headlights off, while amber eyes watched her lit window without rest. Sebastian never asked again. He simply chose to protect her in silence, as a stranger might. But his heart could not let her go. Soul Stories fam, if you're watching on another channel, come home to us at Soul Stories, where tens of thousands are listening and sharing together. The surgery schedule stretched endlessly across the monitor like a road with no end. Elise peeled off her gloves, quickly scrubbed her hands under the faucet, and tilted her head back, breathing deeply until the ringing in her ears subsided. Since morning, she'd only had a few sips of water. The biscuit in her coat pocket was still untouched. She'd forgotten it was even there. The OR doors swung open, a blast of cold air rushing into the hallway. Elise stepped out, intending to return to the records room to finish her surgical notes. But after only a few steps, everything tilted. The fluorescent light smeared into long streaks, and voices faded as if behind thick glass. One thought crossed her mind. Don't faint in front of the interns, before her knees buckled. A steady hand caught her arm, pulling her firmly against a solid shoulder. The clean scent of cologne mixed with the sharp tang of antiseptic. Carter! A deep, husky voice murmured close to her ear. Sebastian. I'm fine. Elise tried to speak, but her head felt thick and heavy. She let him guide her, his strides firm and sure. Not the ER. He brought her into the doctor's lounge next to the OR, a small room with a padded bench, lockers, and a hot water dispenser. Sebastian helped her onto the bench, propped a pillow behind her back, then turned to the door. Water, some crackers, and a portable glucometer. Don't sound an alarm. She's just exhausted. The nurse nodded and hurried off. Elise leaned into the pillow, eyes half closed, her breathing slowly evening out. She heard his footsteps return quickly, the snap of a bottle cap. Small sips. Sebastian held the water to her lips. Elise pushed herself upright and took it herself. She hated the feeling of being cared for, but her throat was parched like desert sand. Hand up. He waited for her to place her finger on the glucometer. The screen blinked numbers. A bit low. Eat this. A packet of crackers, already opened, appeared in her line of sight. You don't have to, Elise muttered, breaking off a small piece while trying to keep her distance. I know. Sebastian dragged a chair closer, sitting across from her, separated by only a low table. But I want to. The door cracked open. The nurse slipped in a blanket and a cup of ginger tea. Sebastian accepted them with a nod, waiting until the door closed before laying the blanket across Elise's legs. She froze, ready to push it down, but the warmth seeped in, calming the tremor in her calves. Carter! His voice dropped, as if he might shatter something fragile in the air. You don't have to prove to the world you're a machine. Elise turned her face away, avoiding those amber eyes. I'm not a machine. I'm just doing my job. Your job doesn't include collapsing in the hallway. Her lips pressed thin, just lack of sleep, and dehydration, and skipped meals. He leaned back, voice steady. I reassigned 2 consults this afternoon to another team. Sleep for an hour, eat something, then finish your notes. Elise's head snapped up, defiance sparking in her eyes. You don't have the right to control my schedule. I do. Sebastian checked his watch. As the one responsible for operational safety, and as someone who doesn't want to watch you hit the floor again. He paused, his voice lower. I won't cross the lines you draw, but within those lines I can keep you safe. Elise stayed silent. The steam from the ginger tea eased the cramp in her stomach. She took another bite of a cracker, swallowed slowly, then set the cup down. I don't need anyone to take care of me. I understand. He nodded slightly. But letting someone carry a corner doesn't make you less. No more words, only the tick of the clock and the patter of rain against the glass. Elise pulled the blanket higher, eyelids growing heavy. From far away, she heard Sebastian murmur to the nurse outside. No one goes in for an hour unless it's urgent. Sleep came quickly, strangely easy. In her dream, the museum garden's doors opened, and golden lights fell like rain. Someone stood by the wall, amber eyes fixed on her. She wanted to turn away, as she always did, but her feet refused to move. His name slipped from her lips, soft as a reflex of the heart. Sebastian. The chair creaked. Sebastian looked up from his phone, his eyes wide, his hand clenched slowly on his knee. He didn't move closer, didn't touch her, just sat there, letting her voice linger in the quiet room. He leaned back, exhaling slowly. The pain of the past days, her claim that the baby was another man's, hadn't faded. But here, amid ginger tea and rain, one truth stood clear. She wasn't indifferent. He typed quickly. Reschedule the 4 p.m. meeting, block Carter for a 60-minute rest, prepare plain congee and salted egg in the cafeteria by 3:30. Please note that no name tag is required. He placed his phone face down, eyes drifting back to her. An hour passed. Elise shifted in her sleep, pulling the blanket higher. Sebastian rose, dimmed the lights, and adjusted the thermostat. His gaze fell now and then on her hands, fingers curved as though cradling something invisible. He didn't dare think further. When Elise woke, the clock read a little past 3. She blinked, realizing she was still in the lounge. Blanket tucked neatly, half a cup of tea gone cold on the table. Sebastian sat nearby, elbows on his knees, watching like a sentry. "You stayed?" Her voice was hoarse. "Yes." Sebastian rose, smooth and composed, as if leaving a boardroom. "Any more dizziness?" "Better." Elise lowered the blanket and sat up. A flicker of embarrassment passed her face. "Thank you for the tea and the crackers," he finished, the corner of his lips barely twitching. "And for sleeping." Elise drew in a breath. Her logic screamed to rebuild her walls. "Sebastian, this can't happen again. I don't want anyone thinking I'm getting special treatment." "I know. That's why everything will look as though I was never here." He gestured toward the door. "There's porridge waiting in the cafeteria." No name. "Eat, then finish your paperwork. Your cases this afternoon are already reassigned." "You're controlling me." "I'm managing risk." He tilted his head, his gaze softening in rare fashion. "Carter, you can keep hating me, but don't bargain with your health." Elise pressed her lips together, saying nothing. She stood, folded the blanket neatly, and placed it on the chair. As she passed him, she paused for half a beat. "I didn't ask you to stay. I didn't wait for you to." Sebastian opened the door, stepping aside. "I just stayed." The hallway outside buzzed with life again. Elise stepped out, meeting the eyes of a few colleagues. No one knew what had happened in that small room. To them, it was just a break between surgeries. Only Elise knew, and Sebastian knew, that a fine line had just been redrawn. He had promised not to cross it, and she, though she wouldn't admit it, had let him stand just inside. Before turning toward the cafeteria, Elise glanced back. Sebastian still stood there, hands in his pockets, his face the same proud CEO, but his eyes were lighter, less burdened. He gave a small nod, like the period at the end of a very long sentence. Elise turned away. A steaming bowl of porridge waited on the counter. No name, no note. She picked it up, and a faint smile tugged at her lips. Outside, the rain had stopped. The world glistened clearly, even the things she'd tried to blur. And Sebastian, walking back toward administration, gave the nurse a final instruction. "If Carter shows any more signs of fatigue, call me directly." Then he moved on, his footsteps steady. No fanfare, no declarations, just a stubborn promise. Within the lines she drew, he would be the one holding the umbrella. In the days after her collapse, Elise returned to work as if nothing had happened. But Ryan, with the sharp eyes of a cardiologist and the deeper eyes of an old friend, noticed what she tried so hard to deny. Whenever Sebastian entered a meeting room, Elise's gaze darted away, though her pulse clearly betrayed her. Whenever his name came up, she changed the subject too quickly. And in moments of fatigue, when her blue eyes drifted into the distance, Ryan knew without doubt the man in her thoughts wasn't him. One late evening, Elise was organizing files when Ryan walked in. He placed a cup of yogurt on her desk. She looked up and forced a smile. "You keep taking care of me like this, I'll start feeling guilty." Ryan sat across from her, his eyes gentle yet steady. "Elise, I have to ask, do you really believe you can forget Sebastian?" Elise froze. She wanted to deny it, but her lips stayed shut. Finally, her voice came out faint, like a breeze. "I don't love him. I don't want to love him. I hate that man." Ryan held her gaze, no reproach in his eyes, only a sorrowful smile. "Some things the heart knows, Elise. You don't have to say them aloud. I already see it." Her head dropped, fingers clutching a sheet of paper, trembling like a child caught with a secret. Ryan gently touched her shoulder. "You don't have to act strong with me." Elise broke down, covering her face with her hands. Tears spilled hot and fast. "Ryan, I don't want my life tied to him." "I'm scared." Ryan smiled softly, pain flickering behind his brown eyes. "Don't be. That man might infuriate you, might drive you out of control, but he's never let you fall. If what you truly want is happiness, then that won't come from me. The next day, Ryan sought Sebastian out. He waited inside the CEO's office, the high-rise corner room with glass walls overlooking the city. When Sebastian entered, surprise flickered across his face. "Collins? What are you doing here?" Ryan stood, meeting his gaze head-on. His voice was steady, without preamble. "I came to tell you the truth. The baby Elise is carrying is yours." The air thickened instantly. Sebastian froze, his hand on the edge of the desk trembling for the briefest second. His amber eyes flared, then darkened like a brewing storm. "What did you just say?" Ryan held his calm. "She was afraid you'd see the child only as a duty, so she asked me to step in." I agreed, but looking at Elise, I know she's not mine. She needs a man who can move her heart, whether in fury or in love. And that man, Sebastian, is you. For a moment, Sebastian was silent. Then he let out a short, rough laugh that caught in his throat. "She actually dared to lie to me like that." "She didn't do it to hurt you," Ryan said quietly. "She did it because she's afraid. Elise has always tried to control everything, but with you, she can't. That's why she ran." Sebastian braced both hands on the desk, drawing in a deep breath to steady himself. "And you? You were willing to claim a child that isn't even yours?" Ryan gave a sad smile. "I thought being by her side would be enough. But I was wrong. Real love isn't about possessing. It's about seeing the person you love happy, even if that happiness doesn't include you." He stepped closer and laid a hand lightly on Sebastian's shoulder. "Show her she's not just a responsibility. Show her she's loved." With that, Ryan turned and left, the office door closing softly behind him, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Sebastian stood unmoving, eyes fixed on the rain streaking down the glass. His heart pounded, torn between anger and hurt, but beneath it, something else stirred. Certainty. Elise had whispered his name in her sleep. Now Ryan had admitted the truth. What else was there to deny? The baby was his. Elise was the only woman he could never let go of. Sebastian's fists clenched, his expression hardening with resolve. For the first time in his life, he realized he feared losing something no power or wealth could ever buy. And he swore he would never let it slip from his hands again. That afternoon, the hospital bustled as usual. Elise had just finished a surgery, removed her mask, and stepped into the hallway, only to find a tall figure waiting for her. Sebastian. Dark suit, perfectly knotted tie, amber eyes cold as ice yet stormy as if hiding a brewing tempest. "We need to talk." His deep voice was firm, leaving her no room to escape. "I still have work," Elise began, trying to turn away. Sebastian's hand closed around her wrist, not harsh but enough to stop her. With a subtle pull, he guided her into an empty conference room and shut the door. Alone in the silence, with no monitor beeps or hurried footsteps outside, Elise's heart thundered as if it would burst from her chest. "The baby!" Sebastian's eyes locked onto hers, his voice unwavering. "It's mine, isn't it?" Elise stepped back, her lips trembling. For days she had told herself to be strong, to hide it, to build her walls high. But under that gaze, every defense crumbled. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Yes, it's your child." Sebastian froze, but before he could speak, Elise choked out, I was afraid. Afraid you'd see me and the baby as a duty to carry. Afraid you'd marry me only to fulfill an obligation. Not because of love." "Sebastian, I don't want a cold marriage like that. I couldn't survive it." Her voice broke. Her hands instinctively cupped her belly. "So I lied. To keep the baby safe, to protect it from a life bound by power and calculation." She lifted her tear-drenched blue eyes. "Do you understand? I was terrified that you didn't love us." Sebastian stood still, then slowly stepped closer, drawing a deep breath. His voice was hoarse, stripped of its usual chill. "Elise, do you know why I've always run from attachment?" "Because I was abandoned." She looked up in shock. His gaze drifted far away, clouded by memory. "When I was 12, my mother left with another man, leaving me with a father who only cared about numbers. I believed no one ever stayed, so I built walls. Turned everything into contracts, into responsibilities, into things I could control. He paused, his tone raw, fractured. But you shattered all of it. From the first time you stood up to me in that meeting, I knew you were different. I never hated you. I just didn't dare admit it. And when you said the baby was Ryan's, his fist clenched, eyes shutting, then opening again with pain blazing. My heart hurt so badly I couldn't breathe. I've never felt that before. Sebastian stepped closer still, until Elise could hear his breath. His voice dropped, each word carving the air like a blade. You are not a responsibility. The baby is not a responsibility. Elise, you are everything. I truly love you. Elise's eyes widened, tears streaming. You love me? Love you. So much I lose my reason. His hand trembled as it brushed her cheek. I can't bear to lose you again. If you tell me one more time this child belongs to someone else, I'll break. Elise sobbed, letting the tears fall. Never had she seen Sebastian so fragile, not the cold CEO obsessed with profits, but a man marked by the scars of abandonment. Sebastian, she whispered, I can't stop thinking about you either. But I'm scared. I'm scared my love won't be enough to heal you. He clasped her hands firmly, his voice resolute. You don't need to heal me. Just stay. The rest, I'll learn. I'll learn how to love, how to be the man worthy of you and our child. The final distance between them dissolved as Sebastian pulled her into his arms. Elise pressed against his chest, her tears soaking the expensive shirt. But he didn't care. His embrace was fierce, as though he could make up for all the days they had lost. In his arms, Elise felt her fear slowly fade, replaced by a fragile but real trust. You'll give me a chance, won't you? Sebastian whispered against her ear, his voice trembling for the first time. Elise nodded through her tears. If you truly love us, then I have nothing left to fear. After the tearful confession, Elise and Sebastian's lives turned to a new page. No more fiery clashes in the boardroom, no more icy glares. Instead, their evenings were spent together at a modest dinner table. Sebastian awkwardly trying to pick up vegetables for her, Elise smiling as she teased, a CEO who picks greens like he's doing open-heart surgery. The patient would die waiting. He frowned, but the corner of his mouth betrayed a rare upward curve. At least I'm not letting you skip meals anymore. They strolled hand in hand through Hyde Park. Elise placed her hand on her belly, whispering, the baby's kicking. Sebastian bent down, pressing his ear for the first time to the sound of his child's heartbeat, his amber eyes lighting up like a boy hearing music for the very first time. They shopped for baby clothes together, tiny pale pink bodysuits, a soft bear-printed blanket. Sebastian, who once signed contracts worth millions without hesitation, now spent hours comparing baby bottles. Which one's best for a newborn's digestion? Elise burst out laughing, while his ears turned red as he muttered, feigning sternness, this is more important than any million-pound deal. On weekends, they attended prenatal classes. Sebastian wore an apron, fumbling as he practiced changing diapers on a plastic doll. Elise laughed so hard she cried. He glanced over, his face serious. Wait until I try with the real thing, I'll be better. These were days Elise had never imagined. Simple happiness, where a once cold CEO and a principled doctor became two ordinary people waiting for the little miracle of their lives. But happiness never came without trials. At 36 weeks, Elise was struck by severe abdominal pain and dizziness. Sebastian rushed her to the hospital. Doctors examined her, their faces tightening. Signs of severe preeclampsia. We need to perform an emergency C-section immediately. Elise gripped Sebastian's hand, cold sweat pouring down her face. Will I be okay? Sebastian clasped her hand tightly, his voice breaking. You'll be okay. You both have to be okay. They wheeled her into the OR. The steel doors swung shut, leaving Sebastian outside. He paced the hallway like a shadow of himself. Once he had been a man who believed in nothing but numbers and power. But now he was only a husband, a father, desperate and powerless. He sank onto a bench, burying his face in his hands. Images of Elise smiling, her hand on her belly, whispering, the baby's kicking, flashed before him. Please save them. Please let them both be safe. His voice cracked, unsure whether he was speaking to God, fate, or any power that might be listening. In that moment, Sebastian Knight, the once arrogant CEO who stood above the world, broke down in tears. Time crawled, every minute an eternity. 4 hours passed, each heavier than a lifetime. At last, the OR doors burst open. A doctor pulled down his mask, smiling. Both mother and baby are safe. Sebastian shot to his feet, rushing forward. Elise? Is she awake? She's in recovery. The surgery was a success. And congratulations. You have a beautiful baby girl. A nurse carried out a tiny bundle wrapped in pale pink. Sebastian stared, his heart exploding in his chest. The baby scrunched her little face, fists curled, letting out weak cries. With trembling hands, Sebastian reached out, holding for the first time a fragile new life. Hot tears blurred his vision, running down his cheeks. Hello, sweetheart, he whispered, voice raw. It's Daddy. I promise I'll never abandon you. This family is everything to me. The baby stirred, her tiny hand pawing at his chest, searching for warmth. Sebastian bent down, pressing a trembling kiss to her forehead. In that moment, he understood. Money, power, prestige, none of it had ever been the crown of his life. This small family, Elise and their precious daughter, was the true meaning he had searched for all along. One spring afternoon, as the cherry blossoms in the hospital garden began to bloom, Elise sat on a bench, her hand braced at her side. Her eyes were tired, but they carried a peaceful glow. Beside her, Sebastian walked up, holding a bouquet of white tulips. The flower she once said was the simplest, yet the purest. This was the very garden where they had once argued bitterly. Elise remembered pointing a finger at Sebastian and saying, "You see patients as numbers, but I will never let you turn this place into a money factory." Back then, his gaze had been sharp as a blade, his tone dripping with scorn. But today, in that same garden, those amber eyes were different, softer, warmer. Sebastian knelt in front of her, not caring that his expensive suit brushed the dirt. He opened a small velvet box, revealing a simple yet radiant ring that glinted in the afternoon light. Elise Carter, his voice was hoarse, trembling, as though he feared losing this moment. Will you marry me? Not because of one fateful night, not because of duty to our child, but because I love you. You are the one who first taught my heart what it means to fear losing someone. Elise froze, tears streaming down her cheeks and falling onto the petals of the white tulips. Memories rushed back, the fierce debates, the sharp text messages, the wine-soaked gala night, the panicked morning after, and the sight of Sebastian crumpled outside the operating room, praying desperately for her and their baby. She smiled through her tears and nodded. Yes, I will. Maybe after all, you're no longer my number one enemy. Sebastian laughed, his eyes blazing with joy. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms, pressing a tender kiss to her forehead. All the misunderstandings, the distance, the resentment, dissolved as if they had never existed. 1 year later, their suburban home sat beside a wide green field, its red-tiled roof framed by climbing vines that covered the entrance. No more cold penthouse, no more boardrooms filled with arguments, only a warm kitchen, the scent of baking bread in the air, and the joyous laughter of a child. Sebastian, once the CEO who made the entire medical world tremble, now stood in the kitchen with an apron tied around his waist, awkwardly stirring a pot of porridge for his daughter. You made that yourself? Elise walked in, their baby girl in her arms, laughing at the sight. Sebastian cleared his throat, trying to look serious. Even a CEO can cook, as long as it means you and our daughter eat well. Elise held their little girl close, her smile sweet. You really have changed, Sebastian Knight. He stepped closer, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. No, I haven't changed. I just found the place I truly belong. Their baby giggled, reaching out her tiny hand to wrap around his finger. Sebastian bent down, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. Elise's heart trembled at the sight, not from fear, as it once had, but from sheer happiness. That night, after putting their daughter to bed, Elise sat in the living room, holding her old phone, the one filled with countless memories. Her finger hovered over a message she had once written in anger. If Sebastian Knight were the last man on earth, I'd rather stay single forever. Elise chuckled softly, shaking her head. Who would have thought that bitter joke would become the turning point of her life? She opened the Notes app and typed beneath it, "Maybe that mistake was the beginning of the truest thing I've ever known." Sebastian came up from behind, wrapping his arms around her. His husky voice brushed her ear. "Are you writing mean things about me again?" Elise turned to him, her eyes shimmering. "No, I'm rewriting our love story." He kissed her lips softly, whispering, "Then let me keep writing the most beautiful chapters." Outside the window, moonlight bathed the garden, where the cherry blossoms swayed in the breeze. The same blossoms that had once witnessed their battles. But this time, they stood as witnesses to something new. The story of a small family, born of misunderstanding, forged through trials and sealed by unshakable love. Thank you for being part of Soul Stories. If you're listening on another channel, come back to the official home so you can continue our love journeys together with the Soul Stories family.